I was halfway through rebuilding our manufacturing traceability system, something the auditors had been breathing down our necks about for months, when Richard Stone, the CEO of Stone Tech Industries, walked into my office without knocking. He didn't sit. He didn't greet me. He didn't even look at me. He just stood there scrolling on his phone and said, flat, emotionless, "Clear your office. My son needs it." Just like that. No explanation, no warning, no thank you for the 8 years I'd spent rescuing his failing software infrastructure. Just those words and the unspoken message behind them. You are replaceable. I remember blinking once, twice, as if maybe I misheard. But he just kept texting, waiting. So I said the only thing I could say without handing him my dignity. Sure. He nodded like I'd just agreed to fetch him coffee and walked out, already onto whatever message was glowing on his screen. My name is Eva Monroe, and at that moment I realized something I should have seen years earlier. In Richard's eyes, experience meant nothing. Loyalty meant nothing. Results meant nothing. The only currency that mattered was bloodline. When I first joined Stone Tech, the system was chaos. Purchase orders missing. Supplier records outdated by years. Compliance forms scattered across email threads like confetti after a parade. If a federal audit had struck then, we would have been fined into bankruptcy. I rebuilt everything. Slowly, methodically, late nights, weekends, holidays. In the military, back before life became cubicles and boardrooms, we had a saying: amateurs rely on luck. Professionals build systems. And I built Stone Tech, a system so smooth the executives forgot it ever needed maintenance. That was my mistake. When things run flawlessly, people assume it's easy. I packed slowly. Not because I was emotional, though there was an ache, but because every object in that room had history. The whiteboard covered in diagrams no one else understood. The second monitor calibrated perfectly for vendor dashboards. The encrypted flash drive with every system automation I'd built. My notebook filled with codes, vendor contacts, audit exceptions. 8 years of institutional memory in ink. I placed only 3 things in my bag. My notebook. The flash drive. The framed photo of my dad and me on graduation day. His hand on my shoulder. His proud smile saying more than words ever could. Everything else? I left it for the prince who would inherit my kingdom. Before I walked out, I typed one short message to HR. Working from home until office reassignment is complete. Reach me by email. No drama, no hint of what was really happening. Just silence. Sometimes silence is the loudest response. Monday morning at 8:07 a.m., while I sipped coffee in sweatpants at my kitchen table, a LinkedIn post appeared. Selfie ring light glaring. Perfectly groomed hair, designer watch. Caption: first day stepping into leadership at Stone Tech. Time to modernize outdated systems. Next generation, leadership goals. That was Ryan Stone, the CEO's 27-year-old son. Fresh MBA, 0 industry experience, just confidence and followers. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because arrogance always looks ridiculous before reality hits. The first sign of trouble came faster than I expected. 9:42 a.m. My inbox pinged. Message from Ryan. Hey Eva, where's the automated compliance report? Didn't run this morning. Automated? He really believed everything maintained itself. I didn't reply. At 10:15, another email, this time CCing half of leadership, then another, then finally one from Richard. Please forward necessary files to Ryan and support the transition. Transition. That word was doing a lot of heavy lifting. I only responded with, all operational documentation is maintained in my private records, available upon formal contract agreement. Send. By Wednesday, the silence from my side wasn't silence anymore. It was pressure. Suppliers started asking questions Ryan couldn't answer. A regulatory notice arrived requiring immediate data submission, data only I knew how to retrieve. And then the payment system glitched, because every month it needed manual reconciliation before it could authorize new invoices. Nobody knew that, so vendors didn't get paid. And when vendors don't get paid, vendors stop shipping. Friday morning, 7:56 a.m., my phone buzzed. Richard. No greeting, no small talk. Just panic disguised as control. Ava, there seems to be a misunderstanding. We need you on site temporarily. I sipped my coffee slowly. There's no misunderstanding, I said. You made your decision. A long silence. Ava, be reasonable. I smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly. I was reasonable for 8 years. Now I'm unavailable. Click. And that was the moment Richard Stone finally learned the lesson every arrogant leader eventually faces. You can replace a title. You cannot replace a backbone of a company. And I was gone. For good. The following week felt strangely peaceful. While Stone Tech scrambled internally, I woke up each morning without alarm clocks, without office politics, without the constant expectation that I would fix messes made by people who barely understood the systems keeping their business alive. My work laptop, still connected to their systems, sat powered off on my dining table. I didn't touch it, not because I was avoiding responsibility, but because the responsibility was no longer mine. I had fulfilled my duty. They had dismissed me. And now they were learning what that meant. By Tuesday, cracks in Stone Tech's operations were beginning to show. Quiet at first, like hairline fractures in glass. A message from Tina, the logistics coordinator, hit my personal email. Ava, can I ask you something privately? None of Ryan's changes make sense, and he keeps saying things like streamline, but orders are already stuck. Do you know what's going on? I read it twice. Tina wasn't dramatic, wasn't one to panic. If she was contacting me off record, things were worse than I thought. I typed back carefully. I'm no longer responsible for those decisions. Speak to management. Protect yourself. She replied with only 2 words. I'm scared. And I knew exactly why. At Stone Tech, fear never came suddenly. It crept in slowly, disguised as restructuring. Wednesday morning, another ping. LinkedIn again. Ryan posted a screenshot of some dashboard with charts and financial metrics. Caption, making tough changes and driving necessary improvements. Leadership means big decisions. Disruption. Future of manufacturing comments poured in from his MBA classmates. Love the energy. Take that company to the next level. Legacy leadership fears change. Push forward. If only they knew. Sudden, uninformed change isn't innovation. It's demolition. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation. At 11:22 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I normally never answer those, but instinct told me this wasn't a telemarketer. Ava speaking. A nervous voice. Hi, this is Mark from Compliance Tech Consulting. Stone Tech referred us to you. My eyebrows lifted. Referred? I repeated. Yes. Apparently you built most of their reporting automations, and no one here can find the original documentation. We're trying to run their quarterly compliance submission, and nothing is syncing. The state deadline is Friday. A quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. Not gloating, not triumph. Just validation. I kept my tone professional. I don't consult without a formal contract. Oh, of course, he stammered. Could you send rates? No, I said simply. Stone Tech already has them. He hesitated. Then quietly, they can't afford them. That sentence stayed with me long after the call ended. It wasn't about money. It was about ego. Richard didn't want to admit his mistake. Not to the board, not to his son, and definitely not to me. So instead, he was willing to watch his company bleed. Thursday morning brought another shift. A message from Jim, one of our biggest vendors. Ava, hope you're well. Just checking. Who should we coordinate with now? Ryan approved 2 invoices wrong, and we're freezing shipments until someone competent verifies. Vendors. Freezing shipments. That was serious. Without materials, Stone Tech production stops. If production stops, contracts default. If contracts default, clients pull away. The kind of spiral a company doesn't always recover from. I typed back, I no longer represent Stone Tech. Please direct all communication to their management. Seconds later, he responded, Shame. You kept things running better than anyone. If you ever consult, call me. I stared at that message longer than I expected. Something in me shifted. Not anger, not revenge. Opportunity. By Friday, the frantic calls had become predictable. First Richard, ignored. Then Ryan, ignored. Then HR, ignored. They weren't calling because they respected my expertise. They were calling because they finally realized they never understood the machine I built. That afternoon, as I folded laundry, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text. From Richard. Ava, we need you back temporarily. Full pay reinstated. Office can be reassigned. Please call. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get from him. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. I typed slowly, deliberately. I'm unavailable. Please stop contacting me unless it is through legal or contracts. No anger. No emotion. Just finality. I hit send. That night, sitting by my window with a glass of red wine, I watched the city lights shimmer. Cars moving, people rushing, businesses alive and oblivious. Stone Tech was no longer part of my world, and for the first time in years, that thought didn't scare me. It thrilled me. Some endings aren't losses. Some endings are open doors disguised as slammed ones. And the door behind me? Locked. Permanently. Because now, finally, I had room to build something of my own. The third week after I walked out of Stone Tech didn't feel like freedom. It felt like adjustment. My mornings were quiet. No rushing. No scrambling through traffic. No mentally preparing to justify decisions to people who didn't understand systems, processes, or consequences. Still, every time my phone buzzed, a small part of me expected another crisis call from Stone Tech. Old habits die slowly, but I didn't owe them reactions anymore. Not my time, not my expertise, not my emotional energy. They had made the choice. Now they were living with it. On Monday afternoon, I met with my accountant, a calm woman named Helena, who spoke with the confidence of someone who had seen enough people wait too long to bet on themselves. So, she said, flipping through paperwork, you've had 3 separate companies reach out wanting consulting support? Yes. And Stone Tech? They want help, I said, but they don't want accountability. Her smile was small but knowing. That's the moment most careers pivot. Not when someone sees your worth, but when someone refuses to and you decide to stop shrinking. The words hit harder than I expected, because she was right. Leaving Stone Tech wasn't the betrayal. Staying would have been. By Wednesday, I had signed my first official consulting contract with North River Engineering, a mid-sized manufacturer struggling with supply chain forecasting. They paid my full rate without negotiation, not because they couldn't, but because they respected expertise. After years of being treated like a replaceable cog, that respect felt almost strange. But it also felt right. More inquiries followed, mostly smaller companies, mostly referrals. People talk in this industry, quietly but consistently. And the message spreading now wasn't, Ava left. It was, Ava was the reason Stone Tech worked. Meanwhile, Stone Tech was unraveling faster than anyone predicted. Tina emailed again, short and cautious. 2 more suppliers froze shipments. We're running out of stock. Leadership is blaming transitional turbulence. Everyone knows that's not true. It hurt reading that. Not because Stone Tech deserved help, but because the people still inside didn't deserve the fallout. Especially Tina. She'd been loyal, hardworking, overlooked, just like I had been. I typed a reply, hesitated, then erased it. Trying to save her wasn't my job anymore. Instead, I sent, keep copies of everything. Protect yourself. Don't volunteer to fix what leadership broke. She responded with a single line. Thank you. Not for advice, for acknowledgement. Sometimes acknowledgement is the only kindness available. Thursday morning brought a new surprise. Someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, Ryan stood on my porch. No ring light, no perfect posture, no forced confidence, just exhaustion and fear. "Ava," he said quietly, "can we talk?" For a moment, old reflex, the one that fixes everything, almost answered. But then memory stepped in. His picture-perfect announcement. His comments about modernizing outdated systems. His father dismissing me mid-task. So I stepped outside but didn't invite him in. "What do you need?" I asked. He swallowed. "We can't run the quarterly reports. Vendors won't work with us. Dad is blaming everyone. The board wants documentation I can't find because..." He hesitated. "Because I didn't know what you did. I didn't know how much of this wasn't automated." There it was. The truth finally spoken. Not out of respect. Out of consequence. I didn't soften. I didn't rescue. I just nodded. "And what exactly are you asking, Ryan?" His voice cracked a little. "Can you come back? Just temporarily? I'll give you the office back. I'll tell my dad he was wrong. Whatever it takes." For years, I would have said yes. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in separation. So I answered calmly, "No." His eyes widened. "Just like that?" "Yes," I said. "Just like that. But we need you." "I know," I replied. "But need isn't respect. Need isn't value. And need doesn't erase how I was treated." He exhaled shakily. "So that's it? You won't help? Not at all?" I held his gaze. "If I help you now, you won't learn. And neither will your father." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was realization. Finally, he nodded. Not with agreement, but acceptance. "I'm sorry," he said, barely audible. I didn't respond. He walked back to his car, shoulders heavy, and drove away. That night, as I sat reviewing contracts for new clients, a quiet truth settled inside me. For years, I'd believed survival meant endurance. But leaving Stone Tech taught me something sharper, something stronger. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't fighting back. It's walking away and watching what falls without you. And Stone Tech was finally learning what I already knew. A company can replace a desk, but it cannot replace the person who kept the lights on. By the start of the next month, my consulting work had grown from an idea into something solid, structured, real, sustainable. I had 3 contracts running simultaneously, and all 3 companies treated me with more professionalism than Stone Tech had in 8 years. I worked from a small rented office downtown, nothing glamorous. White walls, a sturdy desk, 2 monitors, and plants I was determined not to kill. But it was mine. That mattered more than luxury ever could. Meanwhile, Stone Tech was making headlines, not the kind companies want. A trade publication released a short article. Stone Tech facing delays, vendor disruptions after leadership changes. The piece didn't mention my name, but it didn't need to. People inside the industry knew exactly what had changed and who had left. On Wednesday morning, while reviewing forecast data for North River Engineering, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Richard, Ryan, or HR. It was someone I never expected, the chairman of Stone Tech's board, Eleanor West. Her message was polite, concise, and impossible to ignore. "Ava, I believe we need to talk. Are you available for a meeting this week?" Eleanor wasn't emotional, impulsive, or arrogant. She was strategic. And when a strategic person reached out, it meant something bigger was moving. I responded with equal professionalism. "Available Friday. Send meeting details to my business address." For the first time, they weren't contacting employee Eva. They were contacting consultant Eva. That shift mattered. Friday arrived with gray clouds and the kind of cold that made the city feel metallic and distant. Eleanor didn't come through email or video call. She arrived in person. She sat across from me in my small office wearing a charcoal blazer and an expression that was both apologetic and analytical. "Ava," she began, folding her hands. "Before anything else, what happened to you was mishandled." I waited. She continued. We've lost 4 major clients in 6 weeks. Our suppliers don't trust leadership. Our compliance reports are overdue, and our internal system is unstable. There it was. The blunt truth no one else at Stone Tech could say aloud. Then she inhaled slowly. We need help. Not from a junior analyst. Not from someone learning on the job. From the person who built the infrastructure. I stayed silent because sometimes silence gives people space to reveal more. Eleanor leaned forward. I'm prepared to offer a consulting contract. Independent. Full control of system recovery strategy. Board-level reporting. 6-month minimum. Her tone remained steady until the final sentence. And I will personally ensure Richard and his son have no involvement with you. That part wasn't business. It was acknowledgement. I could have said yes immediately. But wanting something and needing something are not the same. So I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? She didn't hesitate. Because pain teaches faster than pride listens. I let the words settle. Then I asked another. What happens when I fix the mess? When operations run smoothly again? When the pressure lifts? She understood what I was really asking. Will I be dismissed again once I'm useful? Her answer was simple. Then you decide whether you stay, not us. And for the first time since leaving Stone Tech, something unexpected surfaced. Respect. I reviewed the contract over the weekend. Not emotionally, not reactively, but strategically. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about boundaries. My father once told me, never return to a place broken if you must return as the same version of yourself. I wasn't returning as an employee desperate for approval. If I returned, it would be as someone with control, voice, autonomy, and the power to walk away again. Monday morning, I signed the contract, but before sending it, I added a sentence at the bottom. Non-negotiable. All communication with the CEO or his son will be routed through the board or legal. No direct contact. Then I pressed send. The board's response was immediate and professional. Richard's response, though not sent to me, arrived indirectly through someone still inside. Tina emailed, he's furious, Ryan too, but the board shut them down. Hard. People are actually relieved. Relieved. That word stopped me. Not happy, not excited, not celebrating. Relieved. Because chaos had become the norm since I left. And stability wasn't just needed. It was overdue. That evening, I closed my office laptop and sat quietly, letting the weight of the decision settle. Not as regret, but as clarity. I wasn't going back to fix Stone Tech. I was going back to rebuild control over my own legacy. Some people think revenge is loud, but the truth is, real revenge is walking back through the same doors they pushed you out of. Not because you need them, but because now they need you. And this time, I wasn't returning to belong. I was returning on my terms. I walked back into Stone Tech 8 weeks after being told to clear my office. But this time, there was no hesitation in my steps. No lingering loyalty tugging at my chest. No desire to belong. I wasn't returning as staff. I wasn't returning as backup. I was returning as the person they now had to answer to. When I entered the lobby, a couple of employees looked up. Their expressions told a full story without a word spoken. Relief, recognition, and something else. Justice. Not the dramatic movie kind. The quiet, earned kind. The kind that comes when the tables finally balance. I met the board in the same conference room where Richard once dismissed me in front of executives, brushing off my warnings about system vulnerabilities like I was a nuisance rather than the person holding the company together. Now, the room felt different. Not because the walls or furniture changed, but because my position in it had. Eleanor greeted me first. Ava, she said, extending her hand. Glad you're here. No forced smile, no condescension. Just professionalism. I nodded and took a seat. Richard was already there, stiff, jaw tight, eyes locked on the papers in front of him instead of me. Ryan sat beside him, arms folded, pretending confidence but failing to hide the weight of consequences. It struck me then, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. They weren't villains, just people who believed competence was replaceable. People who mistook familiarity for lack of value. People who assumed the machine would keep running because they never learned who built it. Eleanor opened the meeting. We're here to establish a recovery plan. Eva has full authority over operational restructuring. Any objections? Silence. Not because they agreed, but because they no longer had the power to disagree. Work began immediately. The first week was assessment, digging through broken processes, mismatched data, unpaid vendor files, and outdated reporting queues. I discovered shortcuts Ryan had attempted, deleted approval routes, simplified workflows that removed safeguards, and automation scripts run without pre-processing, like trying to fly a plane by removing half the controls to make it more modern. On Thursday afternoon, I sat across from Ryan and asked one simple question. Why did you change the payment sequence? His answer wasn't defensive or calculated, it was honest. I wanted to prove I could do something meaningful. I thought simplifying things was progress. I studied him. You can't change systems you don't understand, I said, not harshly, but firmly. Efficiency isn't less steps. It's the right steps. He nodded slowly, absorbing a lesson that should have been taught long before he inherited a position he wasn't ready for. That was the first time I saw something in him that wasn't arrogance. Humility. Maybe late, but real. By week 4, shipments were flowing again. Vendors unfroze accounts. Compliance reports were not only filed, they were correct. Systems synced. Audit risk dropped. Inside the company, the atmosphere shifted. Not back to how it was. Better. People asked questions. They documented procedures. They took ownership. They respected the process, not just the outcome. Sometimes pain doesn't destroy. It restructures. When the 6-month contract ended, I was invited to one final board meeting, not to troubleshoot, but to finalize next steps. Eleanor spoke first. Eva, we'd like to offer you a permanent executive position. Full operational oversight. Richard stared at the table, silent. Ryan's expression was unreadable. I let the offer hang for a moment. Not dramatically, just thoughtfully. Then I exhaled slowly. I appreciate it, truly. But I didn't rebuild this company to return to the role I outgrew. StoneTech needs structure. And now it has one. I built a consulting firm because I finally understood my value. And I'm not going backward. Eleanor nodded, not disappointed, but respectful. Then what do you want? She asked. I smiled. A long-term consulting retainer, renewable annually, advisory, not operational, and full autonomy. She extended her hand again. Done. After the meeting, as I walked toward the exit, someone called my name. It was Ryan. He didn't approach immediately. Instead, he spoke from a few feet away, like he understood boundaries now. Eva, thank you. Not just for fixing things, for not letting me ruin the whole company. I nodded once. Learn from it, I said. Mistakes aren't permanent failures unless you repeat them. He gave a small, genuine smile. I will. And for the first time, I believed him. When I stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner. Not because StoneTech had changed, but because I had. Leaving wasn't the end. Returning wasn't revenge. Success wasn't validation. The real victory was recognizing my worth before anyone else did. Because sometimes life doesn't give you applause, closure, or apologies. Sometimes it gives you something better. A second chance. On your terms. I still remember the sound of the cable scraping against the conference table. Sharp, abrupt, final. 1 second, my slides were glowing across the 12-foot screen. The next, everything went black. The CEO, Victor Hale, didn't wait for anyone to react. He yanked my laptop cord completely free and slammed it onto the polished wood surface. Enough, he snapped. I can't listen to this crap any longer. You're embarrassing our company. For a moment, no one breathed. My cheeks burned hot, but I didn't say anything. I didn't defend myself. I didn't look at him. People often expect collapse in moments like this. Trembling hands, stuttering apologies, begging. Instead, I reached for my laptop gently, almost peacefully, and closed the lid. Slow. Deliberate. Because just 2 minutes earlier, as I spoke about the new cybersecurity framework I'd designed, the one Victor claimed was unnecessary and overcomplicated, my phone buzzed inside my blazer pocket, and I had seen the preview message from the client sitting right across the table. Leave the room. He's about to learn a lesson. At the time, I wasn't sure what it meant. Now, I suspected I was about to find out. As I packed my things, the room shifted. A few coworkers smirked, the kind of smirk people wear when someone else becomes the sacrifice that keeps the wolves fed. Others whispered, not even trying to hide it. She really thought she had a chance. Why would she present something he already rejected? She shouldn't have provoked him. Provoked him? All I did was perform the task assigned to me. The same task he approved a week ago. But the truth everyone knew, and no one dared to say, was that Victor never actually listened to ideas unless he believed he came up with them. Still, the humiliation stung. Not because I cared about his opinion, but because my work, months of late nights, research papers, and consultations with global experts, was dismissed like a toddler's drawing taped to the fridge. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Don't react emotionally. Don't give him a scene. Don't let them see the wound. As I zipped my laptop bag, Victor leaned closer, his voice low enough so only I could hear, but sharp enough to slice. You're not leadership material, Claire. You'll never be. I finally looked at him. His confidence wasn't strength. It was arrogance wearing a suit. And arrogance blinds people right before impact. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor. A sound far louder than physics should allow. It felt like a line being drawn between who I had been 5 minutes ago and who I was now. Before I turned to leave, I scanned the room briefly, studying faces the way you memorize a battlefield before it explodes. Some avoided eye contact. Some looked relieved it wasn't them. But one pair of eyes, belonging to the client representative, Evan Russell, VP of a global tech defense group, met mine with steady calm, not pity, not sympathy, purpose. He gave the smallest nod. So small most people would miss it. I didn't. The hallway felt colder than the boardroom. My footsteps echoed as if the building itself was listening. Halfway down the corridor, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Evan. Wait outside. Don't leave. My heart kicked hard in my chest. I stepped into the reception lounge, modern glass walls, quiet hum of air conditioning, and sat down. Behind the boardroom doors, I could hear raised voices, sharp, tense, then louder, then unmistakable. Victor's voice no longer controlled. What do you mean? She already sent the report to legal. My breath caught. They didn't know. No one knew. 2 weeks earlier, Evan had asked me privately to send everything I had, documentation, testing logs, predicted breach models, directly to their federal compliance team. Not because they doubted the system, but because Victor had repeatedly delayed approvals. Almost like he wanted the cybersecurity weaknesses to remain. And now the client knew. All of it. Every ignored warning, every oversight, every risk. The boardroom door exploded open. Executives spilled out, pale and frantic. Victor followed, red-faced, chest heaving. He saw me. And for the first time since I joined the company 3 years earlier, He wasn't smirking. He wasn't dismissive. He looked afraid. My phone buzzed one more time. A final message. They're replacing someone today, and it won't be you. I stood up as Victor approached, voice cracking. Claire, hold on. We need to talk. For the first time since the presentation began, I smiled. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but because sometimes life teaches in painful, unforgettable ways. Respect isn't owed, it's earned. And arrogance has an expiration date. For a moment, Victor and I just stood there. The hallway between us feeling like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. His voice trembled first. Claire, listen. My reaction earlier, it was rushed, unprofessional. His eyes darted toward the boardroom doors where executives watched silently. Let's go somewhere private. We can talk. Fix this. A month ago, I would have followed him. I would have defended my work, apologized for inconveniencing him, tried to make him see value. Not today. I kept my tone calm. There's nothing to fix. The sentence hit harder than a scream. His jaw twitched. Before he could respond, Evan stepped out of the boardroom. His posture carried something Victor's never did. Certainty. Claire, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Could you step back inside? We're requesting your input. My stomach tightened. Not fear. Validation. I walked past Victor without breaking eye contact. For the first time, he didn't stop me. Inside, the boardroom atmosphere had shifted. Gone was the smug amusement, replaced with tension so thick it felt physical. The CFO cleared his throat. Claire, earlier today you mentioned projected breach scenarios. We'd like you to present that portion verbally. Verbally. Without slides, without notes, without preparation. A few months ago, that would have terrified me. But humiliation teaches clarity. I placed my laptop bag on the table, lifted my chin, and spoke. I explained how the company's aging security system was vulnerable, how ransomware families had grown sophisticated, how just one overlooked entry point could cost the client millions, or worse, compromise national infrastructure. No dramatics, no panic, just facts. By the time I finished, no one whispered, no one smirked. Silence held the room. Evan finally spoke. Everything she said aligns with the findings from our independent audit. We requested her full proposal because we were already concerned about your existing infrastructure. He turned to the CEO. And now that I've seen her work, but also your attitude toward it, I'm making this clear. We will not move forward unless Claire leads this project. Victor blinked, stunned. You can't demand personnel involvement. That's overstepping. Evan didn't flinch. It's not a demand. It's a condition. You humiliated your own expert in front of your partners. If she leaves, we follow. The CFO exhaled sharply. The COO stared at the table. Victor paled. And I finally breathed. The HR director stood abruptly, as if remembering something. There's another matter. Claire submitted a formal internal report last month regarding ignored risk documentation and project delays. She looked directly at Victor. You never filed a response. Victor stiffened. Because the report was unnecessary. This entire department has... Enough, the CFO snapped. We've had complaints before. This time there's evidence. Victor's eyes bounced between the executives, searching for support. None came. Then HR delivered the final blow. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation. Every muscle in his face collapsed at once. Humiliation had come full circle. Quiet, controlled, and irreversible. He tried to speak. A defense, an excuse, maybe even an apology. But the board didn't give him the chance. Security arrived. And just like that, the man who unplugged my laptop in front of a room full of people walked out without saying another word. When the door closed behind him, I expected to feel triumph. But instead, what washed over me was something softer. Relief. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't fighting to be heard. I wasn't shrinking to survive. Someone finally listened. Someone finally saw. Evan turned to me. "There's one final question," he said. "Are you willing to lead the implementation?" His words held weight. Not flattery, not pity. Opportunity. I thought of the long nights, the doubt, the exhaustion. I thought of every moment I nearly gave up because someone louder convinced a room I wasn't enough. Then I nodded. "Yes, I am." The CFO smiled. "Good. Then tomorrow we begin." Hours later, as I stepped out of the building, the sun was setting. Soft, golden, quiet. My phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Thank you for not breaking. Watching you today reminded us all." Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's patience. I stopped walking, not because of the message, but because of the truth in it. People think strength is loud, shouting, reacting, fighting. But sometimes strength is the woman who quietly packs her laptop, who doesn't flinch when underestimated, who trusts her work more than someone else's ego. Sometimes strength is knowing. You don't need to prove your worth. Some people just need time to see it. And when they finally do, everything changes. The next morning, walking into the office felt different. Not louder, not more glamorous, just steadier. People looked at me in passing. Some with curiosity, some pretending not to stare, a few with respect they hadn't shown before. But I didn't let any of it sink too deep. Attention is temporary. Behavior is what lasts. At my desk, the first thing waiting was a calendar invite. Kickoff meeting, 10 a.m., led by Claire Thompson. Seeing my name attached to leadership didn't feel triumphant. It felt earned, brick by brick, report by report, night by night. Still, nerves fluttered. Confidence wasn't the absence of fear. It was learning not to let fear speak first. 10 minutes later, Jenna, a project analyst who had always been polite but distant, approached me holding a coffee. She didn't say anything at first. She just placed the cup on my desk. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I blinked. For what? For not speaking yesterday. For laughing when others did. For knowing you were right and staying silent. She wasn't looking for forgiveness. She already knew she didn't deserve it. But life teaches you something important. Most people aren't cruel. They're afraid. Afraid of challenging the loudest voice. Afraid of standing alone. Afraid of being the next target. So I nodded gently. "Thank you for saying it." She exhaled like she'd been carrying that apology for years. The kickoff meeting filled the conference room quickly. No one talked over me. No one questioned whether I should lead. But the real shift happened 20 minutes in. I was explaining the revised deployment timeline when the door opened. Victor walked in. Not storming, not smirking, just walking. He wasn't escorted. He wasn't yelling. He looked smaller somehow, like arrogance had drained out of him overnight. Conversations died instantly. He cleared his throat. I was told I could say something before I left. Before he left. So the suspension wasn't temporary. This was goodbye. My pulse quickened, but I stayed still. Victor slowly scanned the room. His voice wasn't strong, but it wasn't sarcastic either. When you lead a company long enough, you start believing you're the smartest person in every room. You stop listening. He paused. And then someone reminds you that knowledge isn't noise. It's value. And value deserves respect. My chest tightened. He turned to me. "I'm sorry, Claire. Not for yesterday. For every time before that, I shut you down without listening." Silence stretched. Not tense. Thoughtful. Then he nodded once, placed his badge on the table, and left the room. The door clicked shut, quietly. A chapter ending. Not with chaos, but accountability. After the meeting, Evan stayed behind. "You handled that well," he said. "I didn't do anything," I replied. "You didn't attack him. You didn't gloat. You let him face the consequences without trying to control the moment. That's leadership. I looked down at my notes. Does it ever stop feeling overwhelming? I asked softly. He smiled, not mockingly, knowingly. No, but eventually it feels less like drowning and more like steering. His words settled into me like a new truth. Uncomfortable, but right. Over the next weeks, the project moved forward. People asked questions, people sought input, people listened. And slowly the culture shifted. Not all at once, change rarely happens in a single explosion. Sometimes it happens through quiet repetition. Truth, respect, accountability. One afternoon, while reviewing updated security logs, HR emailed me. A new contract attached, a new title, Director of Cybersecurity Architecture. I stared at the screen. It wasn't victory. It was validation. A reminder that standing up for what's right doesn't always require confrontation. Sometimes it requires unwavering belief in the work. The night I signed the contract, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, replaying everything. The humiliation, the message, the shift, the apology. And I realized something. We often think the loudest part of the story is the moment we break, or the moment we rise. But the real turning point? It's quieter. It's the moment we decide, I am worth being heard, even if no one listens yet. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks out of a boardroom calmly, while a storm waits behind the door. And sometimes, just sometimes, the storm changes everything. By the fourth week, everything felt both familiar and unrecognizable. Same building, same badge, same view from the 8th floor window. But the energy? Completely different. Meetings ran smoother. People came prepared. Questions were thoughtful, not performative. And when disagreements happened, because they always do, they were about solutions, not egos. Still, something inside me remained unsettled. Not anxious, just aware. Success changes how people treat you, but it also reveals who they've always been. One morning, while reviewing a vendor contract, my inbox pinged. A message from someone I hadn't expected to hear from. From Victor Hale. Subject, coffee? My stomach tightened. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part understood the request wasn't casual. So, I replied. I'm available at 3 p.m., the cafe across the street. At 3:02, I saw him through the window. No suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, posture less rigid. He looked like a man who'd stopped pretending to be invincible. When he sat down, he didn't force small talk. He just exhaled and said, "Do you ever think about how close you were to walking away?" I studied him. His tone wasn't defensive or manipulative. It was honest. "Yes," I said. "More times than I can count." He gave a sad chuckle. I know I made it difficult. I made a habit of pushing away people smarter than me. Not many people admit that. He continued, slower this time. I built this company from nothing. And somewhere along the line, I stopped believing I needed to learn anything new. His fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup, a small, unconscious gesture of regret. I thought leadership meant power, he said quietly. But watching everything fall apart, I realized it means accountability. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, "So what now?" He lifted his eyes, tired but clear. "I'm consulting for a small startup. They build accessible security tools, low budget, high potential. They wanted me, but they need someone who understands the evolving landscape." A pause. Then the words he never could have said weeks earlier. "Would you consider advising them?" "Not for me. For them. They deserve someone who listens." I wasn't expecting that. But growth isn't just changing yourself. Sometimes it's recognizing when others are trying to change too. I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." His relief was subtle, but real. Before he stood, he added one last thing. Claire, thank you for not fighting me the way I fought you. If you had yelled or made a scene, I would have dug in deeper. But you let the consequences be the teacher. I didn't know what to say, so I simply replied, everyone learns differently. He smiled, small, sincere, then left. And as I watched him walk away, I realized something surprising. I no longer felt anger, just closure. Later that week, during a final pre-deployment review, Jenna leaned close and whispered, "You know what still shocks me?" "What?" "You never once gloated. Most people would have." I thought about it. The humiliation, the whispers, the moment the screen went black, the moment every eye turned to watch me fall. Then the message that changed everything. Leave the room. He's about to learn a lesson. Finally, I answered her. Winning isn't proving someone wrong. It's proving to yourself that walking away from their approval doesn't cost you your worth. She nodded, not because she understood fully, but because she wanted to. Deployment day came faster than expected. The client signed off. The systems ran flawlessly. And when the final confirmation message appeared on the dashboard, the room burst into applause. Evan approached me with a handshake that turned into something warmer, respect in physical form. "You didn't just secure a system," he said. "You changed a workplace." Maybe that was true. Or maybe everyone simply remembered what can happen when someone is underestimated long enough. That evening, as I packed up my things, I paused and looked around the office. Really looked. Where I once felt small, I now felt grounded. Not because of a title, not because of recognition, but because I finally understood. Strength isn't the absence of doubt. Strength is moving forward anyway. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is becoming someone who no longer needs it. 3 months after deployment, life settled into an unexpected rhythm. Not dramatic, not glamorous, just steady. The kind of steady that finally lets you breathe. Our cybersecurity system had not only passed every audit, it had been praised publicly. The client renewed their contract with a multi-year commitment, and suddenly people wanted interviews, conference talks, even podcast appearances. But recognition wasn't the victory. The victory was the quiet. The ability to walk into a room without bracing. The ability to speak without shrinking. The ability to lead without defending your right to. Still, something kept tugging at me. That offer Victor mentioned during our coffee conversation. The startup. I hadn't ignored it, but I hadn't committed either. Not because I didn't want to help. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing towards something out of desperation or fear of being overlooked. I was choosing slowly, carefully, based on alignment, not survival. One Friday afternoon, as I gathered my things to leave, Evan knocked lightly on my door. "Heading out?" he asked. "Trying to," I said with a small smile. "But reports like to multiply." He laughed softly. "Mind if I walk with you?" We left the building together, the late autumn wind pushing fallen leaves across the walkway. Neither of us spoke for the first few steps, and strangely, it wasn't awkward. It felt respectful. Finally, he said, "I heard you met with Victor." I did. "And?" "He's learning," I answered. "Slowly. Honestly." Evan nodded like that mattered more than anything. We reached the street corner before he spoke again. "You know," he said gently, "not everyone gets a moment like you had. A moment where everything someone used against you becomes the thing that elevates you." I looked down at the pavement. It didn't feel like a moment, I admitted. It felt like 1,000 small choices stacked on top of each other. "Exactly," he said. "People think resilience is one dramatic act, but it's not. It's the quiet refusal to stop showing up." We stopped at the crosswalk, and then he asked the question I'd been avoiding from everyone, including myself. "So what do you want now?" Not what's expected, not what pays more, not what's safe. What do you want? No one had asked me that in years, maybe ever. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the world slow. What did I want? Not approval, not revenge, not even recognition. I wanted impact. I wanted autonomy. I wanted places where voices weren't measured by volume, but by value. When I opened my eyes, I knew. I want to build something, I said quietly, not just maintain what already exists. Evan smiled, not surprised, just pleased. Then call the startup. That night, I sat at my dining table with my laptop open and the contract on the screen. It wasn't as large as my current salary. It wasn't prestigious. It didn't come with a private office or a team already built. But it came with something bigger. Trust. Room to innovate. Space to lead. A foundation not yet shaped by ego or hierarchy. I scrolled to the bottom of the contract and hovered over the signature line. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I signed. My resignation meeting the following Monday was calm. The CFO blinked in surprise, but after a pause, nodded with genuine respect. "You'll do incredible things," she said. "Just promise us one thing." "What's that?" "Teach people what you taught us, that intelligence doesn't need permission to exist." I promised. And as I gathered my belongings for the final time, Jenna hugged me tightly. "You changed this place," she whispered. I smiled. "No," I corrected gently. "The place changed because people finally listened." She wiped a tear and laughed. "Same result." On my last day, as I reached the lobby, my phone buzzed. One new message. Not from Evan, not from Jenna, not from the startup. From Victor. "Good luck, Claire. The world needs more leaders who don't lead with fear. Thank you for proving I was wrong. I'm still learning, and I hope that never stops." I stared at the words for a long moment. Not because I needed them, but because they symbolize something important. Not every ending needs a villain. Not every fight needs a winner. Sometimes growth is the quiet apology. Sometimes redemption is the willingness to change. Sometimes closure is finally choosing yourself. As I walked out the glass doors into the crisp afternoon air, I felt something simple and powerful. Peace. Not the kind you wait for, the kind you earn.